Welcome to episode 3 of the members only podcast, where you submit hot takes or any prompt that we give you on the Everyday Sens Instagram page, and we talk about them here on this special inclusive Everyday Sens podcast episode. So, Brennan, we've asked the members to submit their wish list for an ownership change, and we obviously know it's coming. It should be announced actually in the next week. We're hearing anyway. Always it's subject to change, but we've asked people to submit their not hot takes, excuse me, the wish list that they have and kind of the number one thing they want to see change from the previous regime into now and how it's going to change the landscape of being an Ottawa Senators fan. So, and then afterwards, we're going to give our 2 cents on all of them. So it should be a fun little exercise here. And I'm going to start by just throwing one in here from Ian Holmes at Ian Holmes on Instagram. His wish list is Ryan Reynolds. And look, obviously both of us too, but we can kind of maybe just dive into a little bit how recently, I guess, because obviously we've talked since the news broke that he's not going to be submitting a bid, and he didn't submit a bid on Monday's deadline, but we could talk about how maybe he'll join a potential the winning group, and there's still a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people are going to be disappointed just with the fact that Reynolds is out. And I mean, yeah, there's been talk, and Elliot Friedman, who's one of the most plugged in, I'd consider him the number one source of hockey analysis right now. He said, like, you wouldn't count Reynolds out. I think there are some sour feelings from both the league and Reynolds, because I think the league wanted Reynolds to kind of stay impartial and not pick a group, and then at the end he could kind of just be involved. I mean, Gary Bettman couldn't hold back his excitement when asked about Reynolds potentially being involved, right? It's just so good for the league. Could he join a group? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure any of the parties would be happy to take him in. It's just, again, is he going to get that role where he's the face of the franchise? I doubt it, just at this point in the process. For Ian, I don't even disagree. I know we've really harped on Reynolds now. We've talked about him a lot, but I mean, it's arguably the biggest thing in franchise history, so we're going to talk about it, right? I think Reynolds would have been awesome. He would have been the perfect thing, and I said it last time, he was the A+++ option, right? So Ian, you're totally right to be disappointed if he's not involved. I'm completely in agreement with that, and yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, and obviously I'm in the same boat. We were talking before we kind of started recording, and I'm just kind of moving on from Reynolds as an idea. I'm not holding out hope that he'll join another group, because I don't want it to kind of undermine what that group is eventually going to bring. Like, let's say it's the Andlauer, and I think I'm pronouncing that okay, and or one of these other groups that doesn't have the Weekend or Nico Sparks with Snoop Dogg. It's one of these non-celebrity groups. I don't want to kind of go in disappointed already from the get-go that, oh, they're not bringing on Ryan Reynolds, because like we said, it's going to be a positive change, and that's kind of what this episode's all about. It's what do you want to see? But obviously, Ian, we both agree we're big Ryan Reynolds. We were big Ryan Reynolds supporters. Obviously, I think it was kind of rare or hard to find people who weren't on board with that league wide, essentially, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it was just, I think what hurts about it is it was so sudden, right? Like, usually if something, like if Reynolds and Remington, because they weren't guaranteed to win, like they could have gone through the process, been in it right now, and when we find out who the winner is probably next week, like they still could have lost, right? I mean, there was no guaranteeing it. It's just a matter of 2 weeks ago, Ryan Reynolds was like supposedly the front runner to be the next owner of the Ottawa Senators, and the pictures of him at the arena are circulating. He's been involved. It all looks awesome. Like, I started watching Welcome to Wrexham and got my hopes all up 4 days before this happened. So of course everyone's hopes are high, and then out of nowhere, like there was no prep, there was no rumors. Usually there's speculation, just like canceled the entire thing that we've been thinking since November 5th or 7th or whatever it was when he went on the Jimmy Fallon show. It's all gone in a matter of like minutes. Like, you just find it out and that's it. So I think that's what's bitter right now for Sens fans. But again, put it in perspective, right? We still have a lot to look forward to. And like you said, this segment we're doing today on the members pod, it kind of just is about positivity and what we're looking forward to and what we value from ownership.
Yeah, and just moving on from Reynolds, it's like I think if the bids had been submitted and we were all just believing that they were going to submit one and then the report came out, it would have been a little bit different. But the fact that it came out, I guess what was it, 3-4 days before, and then we start the speculation of maybe he'll join another group. That didn't happen in time for the bids, and then it's maybe he'll join another one after. Personally, I'm just like, it is kind of what it is, and personally, the Ottawa Senators, I've gotten my hopes up for them, especially the last couple seasons, and they've disappointed me. So I'm just trying not to hitch myself to Ryan Reynolds. And you just said like the Welcome to Wrexham thing. I was purposely not watching it to not get my hopes up, and I'm not trying to take a victory lap here, but I'm glad I
Hey, I
didn't because
tried to hold off. I was trying to hold
yeah,
off until he actually got in. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and watch it. Like he's gonna get
yeah.
it right now. No, take that away from me.
I mean, I hope like more stuff comes out about why it fell apart and all this, and I mean, if they were planning on a documentary about the whole process, I'd imagine there's some footage there
Oof,
of what some of these
rip the
meetings were.
league
So
apart.
yeah, I mean, you're talking about some very, very deep legal trouble. I'd imagine if that comes out. I not to keep going on Reynolds, but he's famous actually for leaking on the Deadpool footage. If anyone's a Marvel fan, infamously that tape or film footage was sitting on a shelf somewhere at Fox Studios for years, and it leaked. And I'm putting that in quotations for people listening on the audio. And that's what this is Reynolds telling the story, and fans just loved it, got a hold of it, and then they made the movie 2 years later, and it's a hit. It's probably what he's best known for. So that's that would be interesting if that's how it works. But I'd imagine business wise, he'd take a different approach than entertainment wise. But we can move on from Ryan Reynolds because obviously he's on everyone's wish list. Like I said, hard to find people who aren't uh, on the Ryan Reynolds train. But we'll move to something different, and I'm kind of going to jump all over here, just kind of change the vibe. But like you mentioned again with Reynolds, that he was attending a couple games and he was very public and taking pictures with Deadpool themed Senators costumes. So this one is coming from Josh Bjorkfjord. Bjorkfjord. I hope I'm pronouncing that okay. I'm sorry. And it's just his wish list is involvement. He wants them to attend games, have a good personality, be in touch with the players. This is an interesting one because I think involvement can be kind of subjective, right? Let's not forget Eugene Melnick, I would imagine, and reportedly was very, very involved. And we know how that went. Not to suggest that anyone who buys the team will be like him, but it can be good and bad. So I want to get your thoughts on this proposal of having a very involved owner.
Yeah, this was maybe the most interesting one because I think there are two clear sides of thinking on it. So Eugene Melnick, and I can't remember every story, like you can go back and read about it, but I think it was said that he came down to the Sens locker room during the 2007 Stanley Cup final, and like I don't know what he was doing, but I remember a lot of the players came out after and said it was very strange and like peculiar behavior for the owner to be coming down and like interacting with the players between periods and like doing all this weird stuff. But I mean, I don't know. For me, and it's funny because Ryan Reynolds would have been more involved than possibly anybody else in the process, but I do want the owner involved. I know I just read the last tweet I read before coming onto the pod today was forget like the owner. I just want a billionaire who will keep the bankroll running and who stays in the shadows and I never see them. That was the tweet. And so I don't know, like that's obviously what most owners are like in the NHL from by all accounts, right? They kind of just pay the salaries and do the behind the scenes stuff, and most people would be content with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you've got a functionally operating hockey team who is successful and the owner can just have the deep pockets, right? Like that's a win. That would be a win. Like if Michael Andlauer came in and you never really heard from him, that would be a win. Or the Kimmel brothers, right? But at the same time, I think, yeah, like I know there are pictures of Andlauer, for example, with the Hamilton Bulldogs, where he's on the ice and he's got the trophy lifted, right? They won and he's got the trophy lifted. He's screaming. You've seen him like pictures of him screaming during the games. And like, I don't know. I love that stuff. And I do like when the owners are involved. It's just there's a fine line of being too involved and kind of making it weird and uncomfortable. So I think it's a fine line. But yeah, I do agree with Josh on this one that I would like to see that.
I'm not going to lie too, and I will go back to Reynolds just because he, like you said, he would have been very involved, likely just based on what we've seen in Wrexham. But I have to admit, I think as a hockey player, I think it would be a little bit different because, and I know we talk about hockey culture needing to change, blah, 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 but it's interesting when you're met with that scenario. Like if he's Ryan Reynolds coming in and just being like a celebrity interacting with the team on a daily basis, like I don't think that would be an issue, but it's different when he's the guy paying your check, right? Like, let's say I'm going to cut a scenario here, like, and kind of use the Eugene Melnick example that you made from the finals there. If I'm a player in that scenario and Melnick's coming in, and I think the story was he was pissed after a loss or something like that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how it went. If I'm a Sens player who just went out there and put my body on the line for this guy to get a massive payday, the only thing I'm thinking, and it might not even be true, but I'm thinking this guy just wants money, and that's why he's mad and he's taking it out on me. That's just life, and I think that's just the world. Like, your company doesn't succeed, take it out on the people below you. But all that to say, I think in hockey, and especially with the Sens, like, they're not a juggernaut, and they're not going to be the Boston Bruins from last season. Like, I think it would be strange just having an owner so hands on and so connected with the players. Because what if you lose? Like, what if November happens again and it's like the vibes will just go right down the chute? And I think that balance can be really tricky. So I think I'm more on the side of them staying away, but like you said, keeping the money rolling. And that's very, very important. And there's no reason to believe that any of these guys won't. So I think that's kind of the stance I take on this particular wish list item is like, attending games, yeah, like I want them there. I don't want them in Barbados. I don't want them, off world for all intents and purposes. Like, I want them in Ottawa, like in the community, getting a gauge of, oh, we don't have a sellout tonight because there were 20 centimeters of snow and the 417's a log jam. Like, that's important to know. So I just it's difficult, and I know I'm kind of rambling here, but as a like a player who I never played at a super high level, but if there's like a person, like sometimes like parents would come in the room and want the like kind of want their kid to do well, and it's just like a strange vibe. Like, it's kind of hockey, and I know the Sens, DJ Smith and Dorian have done a good job changing the locker room culture, and obviously from those Melnick days, but it still would be a little strange even if Reynolds was here. So that's kind of a part I was always a little bit skeptical about. Like, do you want like Nico Sparks going into the room with the guys after every game? I don't really.
No, but I think it'd be cool if Snoop Dogg did.
Right, but like,
not every game, but every
and
now
look,
and then.
and Josh might be getting at that a little bit, right? Because I think Snoop Dogg to Ian Mendez at the Athletic when he did that interview a couple of weeks ago was like, yeah, I'll come to 6 games a year, and if we make playoffs, I'll come to 10. Not a great quote there from Snoop, because it's like I kind of want a guy who's there for all the games, and I think that's fair. So I just went on a huge ramble about that, but very interesting wish list because it's important.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I mean, it's just hockey. It's a business. It's the way it runs. And it sounds in theory kind of cool to have an owner who's super involved and very active with the players and like on a friendly level and stuff. But at the same time, if you're the player, that feels a little weirder than it sounds on when you say it out loud, like when we're just talking about it. In reality, it's a lot weirder than that. And I think it can very quickly turn into a negative kind of thing and connotation. So for me, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't want somebody, unless it's like a celebrity like Reynolds or somebody who's going to be filming a documentary or kind of having a purpose to being in that role where they're around the players and stuff more. I think that would be better. And I think the thing with this one, and maybe where Josh is feeling it from a bit, is that we got a taste of what was to come with Reynolds during the entire kind of excitement period of it, right? We all theorized like, okay, there's going to be a documentary. We're going to have these behind the scenes looks. We're going to get to know the players more. We're going to get to know the owners more. We're going to get to kind of see behind the curtain because that was their whole plan. And so fans got excited and they want to see that now, right? And I mean, me too. Like, I would love to see that type of thing behind the scenes. But the reality now is if Reynolds isn't involved, that becomes a lot harder, right? So I don't know. I'm with you. I think we kind of beat that one into the ground a bit. But yeah, either way, I think there's a fine line, and that's what it comes down to.
Exactly, and I'm gonna kind of use that to use Alex Lawler sucks next one here, which is going to be actually cares about Ottawa as a city and isn't scared of making big decisions to win. So kind of two for one here, which again completely okay. We like those. It kind of sparks double discussions. So this one, it kind of leans into what I was saying last time. Being there is important, I think, and they don't need to be at all 41 home games and travel with the team, blah blah blah. But like a good presence in the city, I think is fair. And for people listening who aren't from Ottawa and are Senators fans, like Ottawa's a very unique city. It's very spread out, but it's small and tight and very community driven. So having the major sports team have good ties with the community is vital, and I can't stress that enough. So I'll let you go with the big decisions one, like to big decisions to win, like that should be a something that you look for in an owner.
Now, I absolutely love that big decisions one because the first thing I think of when I think of big decisions is expectations and holding firm on especially the coach and GM. And if you're not good enough, you're out the door. Like that if you're hiring someone, I'm telling them that. Like, I'm saying that straight up. We are going to set expectations for you, and if you don't meet them, you're out the door. And that should be the kind of like any coach or GM being hired should know that, right? Like, you shouldn't feel like you have complete job security and you're never going to be fired, right? That's when issues start to happen. That's when complacency happens. And it's kind of been that way, right? Like with under Melnyk, is it just feels like these guys have the longest leash in the entire NHL. I mean, Pierre Dorion never felt like he was going to be fired by Melnyk because it just, I don't know, it just, that's kind of the way it was under Eugene, and that's unfortunate. But for me, yeah, I think decisions, and that also comes to building a salary cap team, right? Like spending money. You're not going to be cheap. You're not going to hold internal budgets. You're going to spend to the cap. You're going to hold it firm on expectations, and you're going to make the decisions necessary. Even if you're buddies with the coach and GM, you're going to fire them if they're not doing good enough, because it is a business. So just like they might not be around the players as much because it's a business, well, you can't also be friends with the coach and GM and not fire them because you're friends and because you don't want to spend more money. So I certainly agree. And like you said about Ottawa too, I think this is why a lot of people aren't on board with the Nico Sparks bid, is that they're not local. Like, they're Los Angeles based, and especially the American based part of their bid is scary to people because obviously there's a lot of worry about relocation and yada yada. I do think it's important to find a local group. I think Andlauer is the most local, and I think it has been reported that any of the groups is willing to work with like Jeff York and some of these local businesses to have partnerships too and have investments. So I think we're going to be on a good spot locally, like with whoever wins. Although I do agree that there is some concern with the Sparks bid there, just because they're not from around here.
Yeah, and the Sparks bid kind of sounds like it's a great, like a huge group of investors already, and then you would factor in the First Nations community that they're reaching out to about LeBreton, and the local investors, because it sounds like Jeff York, former CEO of Farm Boy, I guess, has made a big group of Ottawa investors. So like you could be talking about like 20, 30 people with a seat at the table here for the Sparks bid. But it is called the Sparks bid. So I would imagine he's the guy calling the shots at the end of the day. But we'd have to see how that plays out. I will kind of, say I'm not as skeptical about the LA based kind of aspect of it, especially if he brings in that Ottawa group, mostly because we talk about expectations to win, and I honestly think in professional sports, like the USA doesn't take any, like LA is the spot where if it's not good enough, you're done. If he's a producer in Hollywood, that's kind of the mentality he should have. Like, and maybe it's the complete opposite, and I could be absolutely out to lunch with that, but I understand, like, if you don't come from a sports background, it's easy to kind of be skeptical about the willingness to win and all that. And now, with the Sparks bid, because I think the decisions to win is probably the best prompt here that we have to talk about Sparks. I think publicly and PR wise, it's been very driven towards the inclusivity and all of that. And look, we're not saying that that's not important at all. It really is. And quite honestly, it's kind of the most appealing of what we know of all the four groups who have submitted bids, because we don't know anything else about the other ones really. So to me, though, I don't know if them doing that means they aren't competitive and they don't want to put a winning product on the ice. I know that they have a group of former NHL players at the ready to kind of come in. I think it's Trevor Daley, Grant Fuhr, James Neal, and I believe I'm blanking on the name, but there is a Swedish person who is close with Daniel Alfredsson.
Mattias Nordstrom, who was the captain of the Kings.
There we go. Mattias Nordstrom, former captain of the LA Kings. There's your Alfredsson segue, and we are going to talk about Alfredsson here. I'm going to put that one up next. But like that to me, even if they're just kind of doing it to get attention and get like recognition, and I understand the skepticism about Sparks himself and the business. There's not much about him online, which is a bit of a red flag sometimes with these businesses. But I don't know. I think having that team already and being public about who it is, I kind of like that. Like I like that. It would kind of seem to me if they're the team that gets it in the next 5 weeks, it's boom, here we go. NHL draft. We've got the new guys already in. That's how I kind of see it.
If you enjoyed the first half of this podcast, you can listen to the second half with a subscription to everydaysens.com. You'll gain access to a private link in which you can watch on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Your subscription not only grants access to additional podcasts, articles, wallpapers, and more, but it supports Everyday Sens in covering the team. Jack and I put countless hours into producing quality, unique content for fans of the Senators, and it just wouldn't be feasible without your support. So not only for the premium content, but also for the free content, we really do appreciate every single one of our subscribers. If you've been considering it, we highly recommend it. And that's where you're going to be able to watch the second half of this episode and every other members only podcast. So thank you for listening and go subscribe.